And we're live, streaming to you from Ocean Grove, New Jersey. We are Music Matters with Jason Tramm. Thank you so much for joining us for a unique podcast community where we explore the triumphs and challenges of the performing arts world as seen through the eyes of distinguished colleagues. Thank you so much for helping us grow. We just hit 1,554 subscribers today, and we are growing. We've taken a few weeks off for our summer vacation, but we are back, and we're back with a vengeance. We're going to be podcasting some great guests in the next couple weeks. We've got opera singers, symphonic soloists, rock bands, indie rock bands, singer-songwriters, pop artists, rap artists, you name it. Here we have a discussion across genre to talk about musical innovation and self-discovery made during the challenging COVID period. So thank you so much for joining us. You can hear us on YouTube, Facebook Live. You can also hear us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and on WMCA Radio on Saturdays from 11:30 to noon. So thank you so much for joining us, and welcome. We have a wonderful guest today. We have Mr. Peter Wilson from 4 Trips Ahead, a absolutely fantastic rock band who is based out of New York City and is making a big splash in the music scene, and we're delighted they can join us today. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you so much, Jason. Really happy to be here.
Well, I've really enjoyed getting to know your music and listening to it. And I've got 2 sons who are rock fanatics, so we've been listening to it and just love your vocals and love your energy. And tell us when you started the band.
Wow. So the band is we've known each other for a while as players. We actually came, which happens with a lot of the best bands, we came out of the ashes of 2 other bands in New York that had been playing for a while.
Isn't that the way it works out? Is there's like multiple bands, artists collaborate. So what was the spark that said this is something that's something special?
Well, the cool thing is that we were friends. We were actually, sometimes, which is rare. The longer you do this, the more you know that it's rare when you actually like playing with the people that you play with in the industry. But we actually used to see each other's bands. We had mutual friends, so I knew them as players. I knew them as people. And Brian and I, the guitar player, we used to hang out and have meals together and just chat about what each other was doing. And then right around the time that a lot of things kind of fell apart with my band at the time, he was that band was having a bit of a problem with their lead singer. And it was just one of those things. And we both were kind of dating, kind of checking each other out for months. But it was kind of an immediate thing where we just kind of got together because we had a lot of the same influences, liked a lot of the same music, had been around the same scene. So we kind of knew what to do. And so I would say that we actually probably started really started playing together 15, 16 years ago, but it got really serious over the last dozen or so years, maybe a little more.
How exciting, to make music with your friends and to grow together. So that's a long time, 16 years playing together. That's a really long time.
It's been a while, yeah. And I think a lot of it, other than the front line has been the same since, but our current drummer, Ken, has been with us now for, it's been a little bit of time now. Now it's been 6 or 7 years. I was going to call it new, but it's relatively, but we've been doing a lot together and really just grown as a unit, as writers, and we're really involved in each other's lives, care very much about what happens with each other. And I think it shows, and we've grown and actually got together in very interesting points in what's happening around us in the world. So I felt like that it just when Ken joined, it really just created an ultra extra spark. So we've been really, really ultra productive in that time.
Even great musicians, it takes a personal synchronicity to make it really work. It's the same with the string quartet too. One member who doesn't fit personality-wise can really sour the dynamic. Did you find that when the new drummer came in, it just everything just came together like a puzzle? It just worked?
Yeah, we played, I have to say from the beginning, and we're friends. The nice thing is that we're friends with our original drummer. Dan is still extended family. He's doing, he's more into teaching stuff and doing music therapy, and he's a great drummer. And we played together for many years, had a good chemistry for sure. And for a few years, we were playing with actually the person that mixes most of our music, Nick Cipriano, who's what I call the hidden 5th member of 4 Trips Ahead. And he's a dear friend. He's been producing and working with us for about a dozen years, if not more, about a dozen years. So he really knows our band and loved our band. And he's an amazing drummer too. He actually went to NYU with my guitar player, and they both did music performance together. So they had known each other. But he's more behind the scenes. He just loved the band and kind of helped us at a great time. And then we got Ken, and I just feel like it's just been moving up levels. and it's been really, really great. And like you said, the chemistry is so key. I've done tons of sessions, played with people that were great players, but chemistry-wise, it's not always the right fit. And what's nice is with the four of us, I think there's a really great sense of who we are, and I feel like the Four Trips Ahead sound, if you will, has crystallized with this lineup. So
that's fantastic. So did you always know that you wanted to be in the rock and roll industry? How did you know, what grabbed you?
I know about the industry part. I think you kind of find out about that part. I think that I knew I wanted to do the rock thing. I saw there were certain moments that I had, that I thought, oh, seeing Kiss when I was 8 years old, which was like the first rock concert I went to. And it was
what
such
a first show, man. What a spectacle, huh? That's a true rock spectacle.
And it ruins everything for you because the bar was so high. I just assumed that every rock show was this big and outrageous. So you see Kiss and then you think, oh, okay, great. Everything's like this. And then I saw a bunch of other rock bands that were great musicians, but it took me a while to be like, wait a minute, but they don't do that. There's no explosions. There's nobody, no stages rising.
Where's the pyrotechnics?
Where's the fire breathing? Where's they're just singing and playing, But all joking aside, so that was one of the bugs. And then I just started, there were lots of other ones. The first time I think the second time actually, I was at CBGB's as a kid, and I kind of snuck in with some older kids, and they pulled me in, and I saw the Bad Brains. And they started, they were killing it. They were on, I think, Eye Against Eye, and I was like 15 and a half or something. And HR just literally was, yelling, I think it was Eye Against Eye. And he just ran up on stage and grabbed the mic and literally dove over us, sailed over the crowd. And when I heard that and saw it, I said, oh my God, I have to do this, but I also, it was funny. Growing up in New York at the time was great because there was such a mixture of great live music and just music that you found. Another great moment for me was really discovering Queen. I was going to see the Rocky Horror Picture Show when I was like 11 or 12 in the Village, and I went to a matinee, and I literally was sitting in the audience. They used to show, I don't know if you remember in those days, in between films, they would show, I think I went to some double matinee, and they would show these rock clips, which were kind of videos, but not really videos, more live performance. And then I remember being in my seat and Bohemian Rhapsody comes on, and it was just like, I mean, forget it. I mean, literally, I almost didn't care about Rocky Horror Picture Show at all. I was waiting almost for the movie to finish, and then I literally ran to the East Village and bought whatever Queen albums I could get my hands on, and then that became like another main thing. So there were all these moments where I kind of realized that. My mother was a singer, so
what type of singer?
So she sang with a Ukrainian choir, the Dumka Choir, for about almost 30 years, something like 27, 28 years, every night in the Eastville, every Friday night and on weekends, would have serious rehearsals, and they would tour and do shows, tri-state area, going up to Canada.
There's a huge tradition of choral music in the Ukraine.
Right, exactly. So I grew up, and all her close friends were part of choirs, and they were all great singers. So they would, eat together and afterwards harmonize and sing, and it was very musical. So I used to go down to the East Village when I was like 9 or 10, believe it or not, in a very interesting time of the Village, and when it was what it was. And I used to go record shopping and comic book shopping, and then my mom would say, just make sure you're here before I leave rehearsal. So I'd go up and I'd sneak in really quietly and listen to her and the choir sing, and they would literally like shake the floorboards. So it was really exciting, and hearing the power of the voice, even though obviously it was kind of a very different music than I would pursue, just hearing the singing there. And a lot of those musicians sang with the major choirs in New York City, and some of them were ultra professionals. So, and hearing my mother and her friends just really singing, and then seeing them, they performed everywhere, from Carnegie Hall to St. Patty's Cathedral. And then they toured Europe in the 80s after the Berlin Wall came down, which was very moving and powerful. So there was all this stuff going on, and it was very, very inspirational. And I realized early on, how powerful and communicative the voice was. So that kind of bit me.
Did you take voice lessons? Did you train the voice that way, or?
And I do take voice lessons. Yeah, I kind of, like a lot of musicians, you kind of dabble. So I was kind of like, half singing, kind of singing okay, but not really knowing what I was doing in high school. And then in college, I saw an ad, I'll never forget, in the Village Voice that said "Sing rock with guts." Very simple. And
I
I was
like that. You
yeah.
need that diaphragmatic support.
Yeah, and I kind of looked at it, I was like, who? And I say with this, I ended up with a beautiful relationship with a great teacher, Peter Crawford, for many years. And he really started me, like I was starting and stopping. And then one day he kind of said, listen, do you want to do this? He said, forget about the money, forget about paying me. Let's have a talk. Do you really want to sing? Because if you do, you have to really commit. You have a great instrument, but there's a lot of work you need to do. And it was a great talk because I kind of decided there, I was like, no, I do want to do this. And I was studied with him for many years. I studied with another guy named Claude Stein, who lived on, Peter was all the way uptown and Claude Stein was all the way downtown. And so Claude was doing more of the Broadway kind of stuff. I was with him for a few years when Peter moved out to the West Coast. And what was great about Claude is that Claude was not laid back and friendly. He was more in your face, would make me jog and sing and do all sorts of crazy stuff. But he was great because he was great for my, for just building up the strength of the instrument a bit. And also really kind of, he was teaching a lot of pop artists and a lot of, like I said, Broadway people, and their style is very different than mine, but it was great because I kind of got a sense of what he was about. And then and then 20 years ago, has it been that long? 18, 19 years ago, something like that. I was introduced by a mutual music friend when Claude moved upstate. I was having a hard time finding a singing coach or a teacher, and I was kind of I was very committed by that, and I was starting rehearsing with this band and really wanting to make sure I kept my chops up. And I had a dear friend of mine who's a great drummer say, hey man, I take lessons with this guy, you'd really connect with him, and his name is Jim Dawson. And so Jim is a great singer, songwriter, musician. He was on Buddha records and RCA in the 70s, has made records all the way through, is a better singer, I think, now than he was in the 70s, which is amazing. Incredible musician, and just an incredible, his soul was very important to me. And he's been teaching me the Kurzer technique from Leon Kurzer, who was his teacher, which I think he was from Austria. So I've been studying with JD for now 20 years or so.
Wow.
So, and I literally see him, I'm seeing him tomorrow. I see him weekly, sometimes twice a week when we can, because, my voice is my life.
To be a professional singer requires a lot of discipline, right? And as I've gotten older, you always need to be respectful of the voice, because it's a very, very delicate thing when you get down to it.
Yeah, it's a I hear people call it, a lot of heterosexual males would call it like a wicked mistress kind of thing.
I agree with that. I've worked with a lot of opera singers who had to cancel because, if you're sick, it's really hard to do that type of vocal Olympics. But I imagine it's the same at a rock show. Man, you have to really have your technique ironed out on tour, because you'll blow your cords out if you don't.
Yeah, I learned that really early on, and I and just making sure, am I doing this right? There are a lot of people that you listen to that have great instruments, and then you can tell after years that it's weathered down. Sometimes your voice, of course, changes as you get older, but there's still so many great singers that really took care of their instrument and are doing amazing work, and they still sound great. And I really respect that and love that, because you can tell that they kind of committed themselves to really their voice and giving all. And I learned very early on, thankfully I learned early, that, hey, if I wanted to do this, I would sound pretty good, but then I would notice that my voice the next day, it was like, oh, this is rough. And when it really started coming together for me, after the first few years, and just saying, because I kept doing these multiple gigs, and the more you gig, or the more you do recording sessions or anything else, you start to pay attention to, hey, it's like you said, it's gymnastics. It's kind of like you're working out. And if you
And
don't have,
you're very active vocals in your recordings. You go a lot into the falsetto, up a lot into the upper register. My son was singing along today in a couple of your songs. We were having a great time. Just I love to get to know the bands before I talk to people like yourself, because I don't take anyone on the show that I don't really like the music. That's the first thing. I go through a lot of different bands, a lot of different singers, and I really want to sit down with people I really find something really awesome with the music. And your songs are fantastic. Are you one of the songwriters as well?
yes, I'm like, so we collaborate, but my guitar player and I are the main songwriters. We all kind of are involved in the arrangement. My bass player pulls in Jules all the time, who's really just talented. Everyone's super great. Our drummer has got like great ideas of just rhythm and just arrangements. So, but yeah, I write all the melodies, all the lyrics. So, and the thing that's great is that like, I play with people that are good singers. I mean, my bass player, Dan, as far as I'm concerned, could be, a lead singer in a band on his own. He's just really tremendously talented. And our voices work really well together. We've worked hard on doing like a 3-part harmony kind of thing live, which I think is missing in too many rock shows I go to. So, yeah, so like, thanks so much. I'm glad you appreciate that and, and hear that. But I think that I made a decision a long time ago that I want to be able to do this as long as I can and not cut corners. It's always disappointing when you see live artists and you go see them and you kind of remember the voice or you hear the voice on the record, and then you kind of go to the show, and not even in terms of a change of arrangement, but just you can tell
the voices, especially the real high tenors. It's a real tough thing to keep. I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, sometimes they change the key a whole step lower or something like that. But it's hard. We were talking in the pre-show. I saw John Anderson recently a couple times, and he's in his mid-70s, and the guy can still sing up there. I was like so happy to hear that, because I grew up listening to Yes quite a lot, and his voice is such a unique timbre. And to hear an artist that's managed to keep their voice, that's someone who's studying, who's working it out every day. That's a dedication to the craft.
Absolutely, and it's kind of and knowing like everything from knowing what you eat, what to drink, when not to drink. It's a lot of dedication, and I think that I also feel like I really love songwriting. I love working with the band I do, and I really love and respect the people in our audience that comes to our shows and buys our music and is asking about what we're doing, and they're showing interest. So because of that respect, and you're trying to build this relationship, you have to kind of give it your all too, and that means you have to make certain sacrifices and pay attention. And I I don't listen. Everyone has an off night or has a night where the mind is going somewhere. I find for me, it's usually just I might be thinking too much of the next song or something weird. But in terms of I never get on that stage thinking, hey, oh my God, I hope I can make it through. Which I got to see firsthand playing with earlier bands I played with, and even with the early days of 4 Trips Ahead. I know of a couple of artists, shall remain nameless, who kind of decide not to play additional gigs with us opening because they felt a little threatened, and I would hear them backstage. They didn't have their stuff together, and it was very clear like they would show up right before gigs, and and it impacted the singing. And I was let down a bunch of times because a lot of them were bands I really liked or artists I liked a lot, and I thought I'm never doing that ever. Because
it's ultimately, even take the business out of it, it's about your commitment to the craft of music, and you don't take yourself seriously, take the music serious. I think that's always my motto as a classical conductor is to take the music very seriously and the craft very seriously. So I respect that a lot.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah,
tell me the first song you wrote. How old were you, and what was it about?
First, I remember the first time I wrote. I think I was 4, and I wrote a song about weeping willows. It might have been called Weeping Willows. I wrote them, I think, when my parents were driving either through Connecticut or somewhere in the New England area. And I felt like, I think I heard something like Joni Mitchell or like, I don't know, like some singer-songwriter that had something that was very sad that moved me. And it was on like, it had to be some AM radio kind of thing. And I don't think it was like, I wanted to say the other song I used to remember, like I tried to emulate that Eric Carmen song, All by Myself. Because when I was a little kid, I felt like that was the saddest possible thing, that if you could be all by
yourself. There's a lot of emotion in that song. All by myself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those songs that just like stays with you forever. So like, I think a lot of songs I wrote early on, ironically, because of the music I do now, were very like that. And yeah, so I remember that was like there were some songs, probably a bunch of songs that had similar melodies, but it was something to do with weeping willows and sadness and whatever.
So you were expressive from the very youngest. Now, the Ukrainian musicians I've worked with are very expressive and dramatic people who I've played music with, and I think that's probably in the blood, right? You feel that, you work that, you.
And both sides of I come from, my mother was Ukrainian, my dad was Jamaican. We're both extremely passionate peoples and cultures. What's funny is that they're from such different areas of the world, but very similar in terms of the commitment to art, not doing the typical pop kind of art. Like, this is not Swedish pop, no offense to Swedish pop musicians, but it's very like
ABBA can be offended another time.
Yes, absolutely. And they're back, so I'm happy for them. But like it's very like organic, deep, like you got to feel it, like grounded singers, very committed people that very often have very little in terms of monetary gain or whatever. So the singing is coming from these heartfelt places. Sometimes it's really beautiful, sometimes it's really angry. And I grew up with those sounds. So I remember kind of feeling like early on, I sang along to a ton of stuff, but I wanted to kind of do my own thing, early on. And so I got more serious about kind of trying my own lyrics and start to write down a lot of stanzas, probably through high school. In high school, I was doing that a lot. Middle school, high school, I'd write down lyrics to songs that I loved, but then I would try to write my own kind of thing. An improvement from Weeping Willows, of course, but I started to kind of experiment. And then I got really into the lyrical stuff when I started doing original music in my late teens, early 20s. I started to really kind of almost immediately want to write. I never was into the cover band thing. I know some people do the cover band thing and then they eventually get together and write their own music. My hat's off to that. I think that one of the reasons why I never did that is because I just never felt, I never felt the desire to sing on stage someone else's music. And number two, I always felt like, man, I'm never going to sing it like Freddie Mercury, or I'm never going to sing it like Paul Stanley, or I'll never sing it like Steven Tyler or, Bob Marley or whoever I was listening to. So why am I going to try? Let me just do my thing. And that's
got to be freeing in a way. That's got to be freeing in a way because whenever you do cover bands, you've got to really put yourself in that box more or less, right?
Yeah, I used to see some really great cover bands. I live in Queens. I grew up in Queens and, whatever. But I used to see some incredible cover bands. And they would make really good money. I remember my friend's father used to say, hey, you have a great voice. There's this cover band and they're doing this stuff and they play weddings. And I thought, and I have a lot of respect for those musicians that can do that because you have to learn a tremendous amount of music, varied music, and nail it. And people have to feel like, hey, you're coming from a place of respect for the music and you have to know it. It's funny, I'm very disciplined when it comes to my craft and my own original music. I couldn't find that same connection to sit home and go, okay, I'm going to learn these 5 Billy Joel songs and know this stuff. Not because I didn't think I'm not knocking cover music. I just knew that wasn't my strength. But if you told me, hey, we got 3 days, we're going to write a couple of songs and we're going to meet up with other musicians and do it, I'm all for that. And that can be challenging to some folks too. So that was just where I was at. We actually, 4 Trips Ahead actually recorded our first cover ever.
What was it? They got to hear.
So we covered, so Eddie, obviously everyone knows, was rocked by Eddie Van Halen passing away. So
who wasn't? That was devastating.
It was just this last
Eddie
year.
Eddie Van Halen and Neil Peart.
I mean, months apart. It was incredibly devastating. It was like my childhood getting, snatched from me.
Mine too.
So my band is, big Van Halen fans. We talked about for a while, and we had a mutual friend who he has his own label, and he also is a pretty big producer. He's worked with everyone from Joan Jett to Lady Gaga. Really talented. His name's Pete Cooper-Schmidt, and he decided he was a huge Van Halen fan, like devotee. And he said, hey, why don't we do something where we, raise money for cancer survivors and people who are dealing and actually do something that's really unusual. And so he put together this compilation that has a lot of different artists on it. Steel Pulse does a track. Larry Mitchell, famous guitar player, does a track that we know as well, and many other bands, some more local or regional, but a lot of great musicians. And he asked us, he said, he reached out, he's very close with my guitar player Brian, and he said, hey, we'd be honored if you would do it. So we said, sure, but we're going to really do it. And we at that point had been in lockdown, and so we hadn't even been rehearsing regularly. My guitar player and I had been kind of rehearsing via Skype and sometimes FaceTime and whatever, just to get out and do something. And so we kind of decided to go to the studio we normally record in and be ultra careful in December, which was a little stressful. Not so much learning the song and seeing each other, that was elating, but just the whole arrangement and making sure people were safe, because that was before vaccines and everything. And we pulled it off. We were able to track Drop Dead Legs.
Oh, I love that track. Man, the drumming in that is so good.
Yeah, we did a great, I have to say, I was super proud of us because we hadn't played together in the same room at that point in like 9 months.
So where can we hear Drop Dead Legs? Has that come out and released yet?
Yeah, it has. So the album came out in like, I think March or something. And so I'll share with you.
Is it on YouTube?
You know what? It's not. It will be, and we just got the okay a couple weeks ago, because we were trying to make sure that the release was out and that it made money, because all of it was going to charity. So yeah, we will be playing. Unfortunately, we didn't shoot any video because of the circumstances, but I am super duper proud of that cover. It does some really cool, interesting things. And it was awesome getting together. There's a lot of energy in the track because the song was great, but also we hadn't seen each other or played together. So we were just like, forget it. It was like,
I know exactly what you're feeling, because I did my first 2 orchestra shows in a year and a half this summer, and I did a Beethoven 5 and I did a Pops concert in a park in Long Island with a big 45-piece orchestra, and it was like just seeing, I'm used to seeing these people so often, but I hadn't seen them in so long. And to make music again was so emotional. Just to get up there and do the things we do once again really reminded me why I do music. And isn't it those experiences it's the people you work with?
Absolutely, and that must have been thrilling. I can imagine, and also I can imagine, because you guys, 45-piece orchestra, so you're talking about a whole, literally like a huge extended family getting together. And in our case, it was the 4 of us, and then even the studio owner and the place, the engineer. These are all people that we consider family. So
extended family, sure.
Yeah, so it was great doing that. It was a great shot in the arm. The timing was good, and like I said, I'm super proud of how that came out. We actually, we made sure that we're just not a type of band to kind of do a quick cover, because initially people were like, oh, well, we'll just do like a live kind of version. I was like, no, we're going to do it. And so we really kind of did it up and did a cool arrangement. I won't give anything away, but some interesting things happen, because I
imagine it's going to be heavy.
Oh yeah, it is. For sure.
Which I love. I love the way you guys can be heavy, but also have hooks and really have some texture in there. Because as a musician, I hear a lot of heavy bands, and they only play heavy, and that is, to me, a mistake, because it's like someone yelling at you. If you only hear someone yelling at you, you kind of tune it out. I tell my students, my undergraduates, like, there has to be contrast. Any good music has contrast, from classical to hard rock to anything, really. Same with hip hop. It's got to have contrast. Yep. No contrast, it's not interesting. It's like elevator music. It's in the background.
Absolutely. I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I feel like one of the things that's been great about 4 Trips Ahead is that we're not afraid to try anything, but we constantly, from the early days, we've always had kind of different parts, whether it be a little more proggy or out there, or something just breakdowns, mixing different things. And we also love, I don't care what kind of music it is, I love hooks. I love singing melodies that are fun to hear. And we listen to some really heavy stuff, and grew up around a lot of it. But I've always gravitated to music that has these different dynamics in it, and actually challenges the listener. Because I agree with you, if it's just flat and heavy the whole time, I lose interest. Or if it's just dead quiet, the whole time too, and doesn't move, it's hard for me to totally get into as well. I love things with peaks and valleys, and so we definitely do that with the Van Halen cover. That's a kind of an unwritten rule in our writing process and our recording, that we're always looking for drama, and in a real way, not in a kind of cliched way, but just something that will pull either the lyric out more, or the musical impact be stronger. And I think in our genre, in the hard rock kind of sort of metal drama or sort of prog drama, rather genre, there's always room for that kind of light and dark in the shades. And I think a lot of the better heavy bands, I think about, like a band like Opeth that started out like totally heavy, and and I loved a lot of their earlier stuff. But to me, when they just kind of shed everything and decided to do an all acoustic record, and you could hear the beauty in the voices and the instrumentation, and they realize they're like, wow, once you do that, you open your skies. Like there's so many ways you can go. You can come back to heavy moments, but
when you do it for a long time, when you've been around like you have for a long time, you have to explore new artistic avenues, right? I mean, it's just the nature of growing as a person and an artist.
Absolutely. I mean, another band I think of like Paradise Lost. I remember, and a lot of these bands they definitely shed fans and they go through it. I think we started off kind of a little more mixed and dynamic like that, so we didn't really have to worry as much about as I've seen other big bands and other bands on our level do, where they kind of start off a certain way and then their audience kind of wants them, sometimes in a bad way, to stay there in that box. I love artists that kind of push their audience to kind of, hey, that was us a couple years ago, but here we are now. In our case, I think we always start off that way, a little more with the dynamics, and have just grown as songwriters. But I definitely feel the drama is even more up and down now. Like if we're going to go heavy, we're going really heavy. If we're going,
that's great. It's great. And I it's a rock show. You want it to be heavy at times. Yeah. I saw King Crimson last night, and they were like a symphony orchestra on one track, and then they were incredibly heavy on another track, and it was like a lot of people would not get it, I don't think, but I appreciated the fact that they were uncompromising, in their eccentricity.
And always have been. I mean, if you listen to like their first album versus something like Red or versus
their first album was the only hits they had. The only melodic hits they had were in 1969.
Right, technically, right.
It's
and
insane.
I thought early on they kind of figured, we don't care that much about
and then
this.
they all quit. So it was like, we don't like
Yeah, that's true.
So then they came back as a very heavy band. I mean, interesting, like thrack that album. Anyway, I just love how bands can grow, and that to me, they're incredibly uncompromising in their eccentricity.
Yeah, and what I like about it, though, is what's cool about them as well is that, and again, I don't want to sound like I'm going off on prog bands or some of the proggy metal bands too. I find some of the prog metal stuff that you hear is almost the musicianship is incredible because you can't even dip your toes into that unless you're reading. But I think that you mentioned the idea of also tying it to songwriting and intention. And what's so great, I feel like some of the bands that you hear are a little too technical and more like, hey, I'm writing this out, I'm going to show you my stuff.
I can play really fast in 7/8. Watch.
Right. Yes. Watch. Check it out, and you're going to hear that like 7 times on this record.
That's interesting for one song.
And one part.
Maybe one solo. Okay, I get it.
And artists like King Crimson, artists like I loved Rush for that reason, who kind of also grew in such interesting ways, and I love artists, or we were talking about Yes early on too. Like where, sometimes we just feel these interesting time signatures, or we're feeling like we're going to do something like this, but it was never at the sacrificing for the song. It was merely like kind of either experimentation or just feeling like this is what's right for the song and right for what we're trying to say. And I really, as I've gotten older and the more I write, the more I really gravitate to that, regardless of the type of music you're doing. And I appreciate a lot of those earlier prog artists and kind of like rock artists that were stretching. I even think it's funny when we talk about things like prog, right? Because there were a lot of things on the radio that I listened to when I was growing up that just kind of would naturally do kind of some interesting, weird, quirky things that made songs really amazing. And they weren't like quote unquote prog bands, but they would do really cool things that were a little challenging. But I could tell that it was kind of like, hey, this is the song, it fits the song. And I think that there are artists that are starting to do that again. I think our band is really.
I think so too. I hear bands like yours, and I'm like, boy, there's some really nice elements there mixed with a nice like songwriting style, like a hooky song, like a song that I can remember a melody to. It's not only 164th notes played with their toes, but there's actually interesting musical content that sticks in the mind. It's really important. It's hard to write prog rock that sticks in your mind.
Yes. Yeah, good. And I think that you have to be willing to kind of like find that middle ground. And also, I think, and without sounding cliche about it, I think the groove matters so much in music. And if like I can, move my body to it, or I feel it because I'm performing it, I'm the front person. So I always want to make sure that, and I think everyone in Four Trips Ahead always wants to make sure that that things are swinging. So if we're doing a cool like kind of heavy riffy part, that it's still got a swing. And Ken's a killer drummer and got this wonderful sense of groove, and I think that that's great, and it keeps the music happening. And I think that that's a key to it as well. And I think that that's the heart of rock and roll, right? Because regardless
the motor,
of
right, that motor keeps it going.
Yeah, it's like I don't care what's going on, it's got to be a little sexy. People got to want to swing and dance a little bit too. It's got to move. It doesn't even have to be quote unquote dance music, but it's got to be like sexy. It comes from like the blues, it comes from R&B, and there has to be an element of that. So I know that with what we do, we think about that a lot, like, hey, is this groove? And sometimes when we find a part that we like, we'll just sit in that groove like for a while. I remember when we the first single on our new EP, Remnants, we had this groove before,
which has like 120,000 views on YouTube. I saw today, and you guys are crushing it on Spotify. I was looking at the numbers. I'm just like, you guys are really making some noise with that EP.
I'm so. Can I tell you, it's been such a really, that's a really great thing, and thanks for bringing that up, Jason. I appreciate it, because like it it's funny because of the situation we've been in, we had to be really creative with how we do a lyric video. And we knew we were going to have to do a lyric video because, like I said, we hadn't even been able to see each other. But we were able to kind of make that happen. And rewinding a little bit, I mentioned the song because there was just this groove that was going on, and I had some ideas for a melody, but I just kept hearing this groove and we literally played it, I think, for like a month and a half, just this groove, and we would get lost in it. Sometimes it's like I would listen to write lyrics, and I was listening to our rehearsals, and it was just this groove, and it was like kind of staying with me. And so that's why I think it kind of like things like that I'm really obsessed with. I love. I'm really also pleased that people are connecting with it the way we are. And ironically, we wrote all this and tracked this right before the pandemic. And I think sonically and vibe-wise, and also what the lyric is about, it really is resonating with people, fortunately, unfortunately, because of this kind of pandemic and what's kind of happened in our country and in our world. And it's really, I have to mention also that Wayne, who did the video for us, did an incredible job.
It's really well produced, really professionally well produced.
Yeah, and Wayne was also, what's great is that he definitely got the kind of concept of what we were trying to do. We were trying very much to make sure that it was something that was heavy, that people would connect with, and it would matter. And he asked a lot of questions about the lyrics, and we went back and forth, and he just kind of took the ball and ran with it. And he did a really great job. So we've been really, pleased with it, and I'm glad that people are connecting with it in a real way. It means a lot to us, and especially coming with the fact that we can connect with people, physically. We can't see people. So the idea
when was the last time you guys played a live show?
Man, so the last time I think we figured is the last time we did a showcase in late October 2019.
Would have been, right?
And what was interesting is that we were literally finishing up. So the way we work normally is that we kind of record a bunch of tracks that we really feel, we usually find 5 or 6 tracks that we feel strongly about. And then we kind of go in and record, and then we kind of record our second half of what will be our new album afterwards. And we found that the quality of what we do is better, and we're just really focused. And we did that with our last full length. So that was kind of our mission. So we said, wow, and we were been playing a few of these songs. So we tracked 5 songs and they came out great. And what we ended up doing is we went in to record them, and we had 2 gigs lined up, one in March and one in April of 2020. And we literally were recording, and then we're mixing a bit. And then literally, as I think that we had even tickets we'd sold a lot of tickets for one of our shows, the first of the 2 shows in the city. And then literally we just started seeing what was going on. And then like a couple weeks before the show, everything shut down. And so we haven't played live since then. We have been rehearsing though again, which was great. But there was a good year that other than doing, that Van Halen cover, we were just doing these weird things where we try to get together and see each other and record and sing a little bit over the video chats and things like that. And it was hard. I mean, what was great is that we were connecting with one another, which I think was important for our mental state, but it was very, very frightening. And so we haven't played live. Like I said, we were supposed to play, I think I told you before we came on that we were supposed to play in Richmond for the Richmond Music and Film Festival this Friday. But because of the surge in the Delta variant, we felt like trying to make the arrangements we're putting a lot of people in our group in danger. You're performing for people, you're putting them in danger. There's a lot going on. So we just didn't feel right about it. And we've been seeing, some of our colleagues and other big artists, obviously, everyone's canceling left and right. People are getting COVID who are performers, Jonathan Davis from Korn.
I heard about that.
Corey Taylor from Slipknot, Gene and Paul from Kiss. I mean, it's crazy. It's like major artists who actually have been vaccinated and doing all the safety regs. And I mean, we watch even the New York Yankees, if you're a baseball fan, like watching, and these guys were getting tested.
I'm a Mets fan, but I'll let it go.
Okay. And you know
We're
what?
New York guys, so it's all right.
I'm a Flushing guy, so I grew up in Mets territory, but I'm not an anti-Met guy like some of my Yankee friends who will curse me after the video saying why not. Anyway, but the thing is, we're seeing that this has just been dangerous. So that element of things has been very frustrating for us. So that's why it was really heartening to see that people took to the new single really well. And it resonated the way it is, and we're very excited. At least we were able to actually mix and get the record mastered, and and we're putting it as our record label was like, hey, so what's going on? What are you guys up to? And we're like, well, we were in the middle of recording this album, and we talked, and they said, well, how many songs did you track? And I mentioned to them, well, we did like half an album, and they said, listen, you guys, people want to hear new music, so let's be creative about how we release it. And
Smart.
And as a result, so as a result, we just kind of said, we loved all 5 of these songs, which we felt very passionate about. So we really kind of took our time with tweaking and the mixing, and just we took our time with the artwork. We had time, so we really took our time and were able to kind of pull everything together. And so it's been nice. And now people are finally hearing it, and we've been rehearsing again regularly, which is great. So in our heads, we're gonna, until things get better, our goal is to just keep rehearsing and kind of continue the writing, because we have a bunch of songs that are like floating in the middle of, gestation, if you will.
It takes time to put all that down and to get it till we worked out the arrangements and all that stuff. So when does the album drop? Is it anytime soon?
Yeah. So the EP that's coming out is this Friday, September 10th.
That's pretty soon.
Yep, literally, your timing was awesome. So I was very happy about that, Jason. So the EP comes out this Friday, September 10th, and it's going to be available anywhere, whether you want to stream or whether you want to. There's a pre-order link that's up. If you go check out our socials, you'll see it. I think it was posted a day or two ago, and and so we're it's also not so expensive, so it's like $7 or $8, so you can go out and kind of support what we do. And like I said, I'm super proud of the tracks. What's great is that it's captured. We mixed and mastered it with the sense of, okay, we initially were thinking of this as an album, so how would we kind of put this together as an EP that would still tell a story, because we were fans of EPs. We've done lots of EPs in the past. And so we really kind of messed around with the order a bit, and and mastering and everything. So I'm super, super proud of this and what's going on. And so we're just kind of, now we're going to be releasing, we have a second lyric video which has just started out for a song called It's All Right. And we're going to kind of play with doing a third one because, like I said, I feel really, even though it's only an EP, we feel very strongly about the music. And like I said, the response has been great. So we're hoping that as the months go, that we'll hopefully get to play out soon. Well, we're also trying to think about doing something special where we do kind of a live show, maybe at Spin Studios again, that we can broadcast for people, or maybe from our rehearsal space. So we're going to be talking about doing that, because I think that would be a great way that we can stay connected with everyone
and safe at the same time. So that's not it's amazing how incredibly connected people have become. You're doing EPs. It's been a great time to be doing recordings, to be writing material, and we're going to see such a flowering of this has been the case in music forever. After the Black Death, music flourished in the Renaissance. Yes. After World War II, music flourished because people had to deal with these very tough emotions. And after COVID and during COVID, we're going to see an outpouring of art like you've never seen before, because people have it in here. It has to come out.
Absolutely, I agree. And I think that and art is so important. I mean, art is, obviously for our world, that's our lives. We have to wake up and we have to do this, because if we don't, we'll have, we won't be able to live. And I think that very often in commercial society, everyone's trying to you gather things, right? You own things, you covet things. But I think that interestingly enough, the pandemic did something which was really disarming in society, where it forced people to pause and kind of look at what's important and what am I about? So I have all these things, but what does that mean? What are my relationships like? What am I, and addressing some real issues. And there's been some beautiful things. I think like watching the sales of vinyl, which is what we're hoping to do with our EP soon, explode. Watching the sale of acoustic guitars explode, and watching people people that, fans of ours, and I'm sure a lot of other artists have been asking, hey, what are you up to? What's going on? And watching artists do live streams or doing, showing. I was following Brian May from Queen, was just taking all these songs. Brian May, who's obviously doesn't worry about money or anything like that, but he just felt like, hey, I wanted to connect with people. So I'm going to show you how we wrote and like these Queen classic songs. And I was watching him, and I thought it was so great because you could tell he was really enjoying it and kind of finding a connection with folks. So I agree with you. I think it's so important for the lifeblood of society and people. So I'm excited about that.
Peter, we have a question for the audience. This is from Erica from Brooklyn, who asks, where does the name 4 Trips Forward come from? Or 4 Trips Ahead come from?
4 Trips Ahead. Well, actually, you use the word forward, so it's funny. So we have to think. I have to thank my guitar player Brian. He came up. We were really bad with names. We actually played under some ridiculous names, which I will not utter and repeat now. For literally on purpose. One name was literally a ridiculous name that we kept for a couple gigs because we just couldn't decide, and we wanted it to be a name that meant something. So, and then we finally, Brian said, well, I was thinking about 4 Trips Ahead because there were 4 of us, and the idea that everyone brings something different. And so, but we're going to do this kind of, ahead. We're going to move together, kind of, and move ahead, whatever that means, sonically, personally, emotionally, and so forth. But it's come to mean a bunch of things, I don't overthink it, and I like people to kind of take what they will with it. But that's where that came from.
Isn't that subjective nature of art? I like that. It gives everyone their own interpretation. It's like a great song. Sometimes it's nice not to know what the song's about because everyone's got it about their own. A Rolling Stone song could be about whatever you were experiencing when you heard that song.
It's funny you said that. I was really a little bit nervous until our lyric video got done. I saw the first cut and fell in love with it. I was very nervous about lyric videos because I'm a fan of people not necessarily knowing exactly all the lyrics that we have and what we do. Because I've had people come over to me after a show and said, that song, when you sing this line, and they say the line and they say it wrong, the lyric that they share with me is incorrect to what I wrote. But I listen and they share some really, really beautiful emotional stuff. I had a very heavy, beautiful experience with a couple that became fans of ours and shared something very heavy with me. And one of our songs meant a lot to them, from our last album. And I got very emotional and tried to put on good game face. But she was talking and she kind of got one of the lyrics wrong. But when I heard her talk about the lyric, it was great what she took away from it. And who am I to say, oh, actually what I said was, and I read, and it harkened back to me reading years ago. I'm a big Seal fan, and Seal is always yelled at because
that guy can communicate there's not a non-soulful note in his voice.
Yes, absolutely. And on his first album, which is a life-changing record for me when he first came out, he didn't put any lyrics down. And a lot of people were requesting lyrics. Famously, Madonna was annoyed and asking him to send a lyric sheet. And he wasn't popular or anything, and he kept saying no. And on the second album, the big one with Kiss from a Rose and all that stuff, he actually, instead of putting lyrics, he explains why he doesn't put lyrics to songs in albums. And I kind of thought it was a cute story. And then it took me all this time, like literally just a few years ago, when I had a couple of experiences which made me feel great that people were actually, as heavy as our band was, they were actually listening to lyrics and buying the music and paying attention. But I like kind of not correcting people with lyrics sometimes too. Although the lyric video has been cool because people are responding in a different way. And, it's just like with poetry or any good art, even though you're writing a lyric that means this, people are still going to walk away with their own interpretations. So,
that's the power of art, right? Any art, but this is that it's objective. We all bring ourselves to the art.
Indeed.
Becomes a mirror to ourselves. Yeah,
absolutely. And like I said, I think, not correcting lyrics or whatever, I think that's great because just like people walk away. I was a paint and fine art major in high school, and the more I got into doing what I did and being a visual artist, Ken, our drummer, is also also a really great artist, visual artist, and the more you kind of do that, the more you realize that like you kind of just want to channel your ideas and let it out and let people walk away with whatever they walk away with. And I think music and art is so important for that. And that's why I think people miss it. And, hopefully we get to a better place that we're able to kind of see each other and enjoy these things in these communal spaces again.
So make sure everyone check out their EP, which drops this Friday. 4 Trips Ahead. Their band is spectacular, writing some really wonderful music. Remnant just came out, and it's really, people are really enjoying it. Make sure it's linked here in the description box. Is linked there. It's also in the chat. So make sure you check it out and all their music. What's something that we can look forward to as the band comes out of this period, or as you guys are planning ahead?
So I can tell like immediate things. So like I said, we haven't confirmed anything, but the immediate stuff that we're trying to do is we're hopefully gonna be releasing a 3rd single and figuring out what we're gonna do with that. But we're gonna really promote the next single that's coming out too. That it's called "It's All Right," which is already out, but we're gonna be really pushing it. We're gonna be writing, and the idea is, if we can't get into a normal like live performance thing, the idea is to kind of finish up a lot of these other great songs. My guitar player has been pushing really hard for us to finish this one song, which is very epic, very great 4 Trips Ahead stuff. So the idea would be we kind of finish up. It's like we took a big pause, right? And we're actually going to finish up the second half of the record. So there will be other stuff in the future. But my hopes are that we can put together like a live show and stream something in the coming months, maybe before the end of the year, for fans. I'm hoping that we can get out to start playing definitely by early 2022 more regularly. And just the idea would be that we kind of do a big homecoming. The EP is just coming out, so we're going to be promoting it for a while. Our label is going to be really working, and we're hoping that next summer, that with maybe their sponsorship, that we can get out and actually perform overseas for the first time, because we've never done that. So the hopes are that that's like if everything goes well and things get better everywhere.
It will. It's just a matter of time, and those things will open up again. Those opportunities will happen. I mean, your music is so great. I'm sure I'm amazed by how the Europeans really love their hard rock.
Yep, they
We've had
do.
a lot of great European bands on here, and they're really fun. And
Absolutely.
I think your brand of hard rock will be really exciting everywhere.
Thanks so much. And I want to say also, Jason, I want to pay a special shout out to not only our European fans and obviously the fans in the States, but I really want to shout out our Latin American fans who've been like totally,
Cool.
I have to say, and I love all of Latin America. I want to visit everywhere, but Brazil, we love you guys. I don't know what's in the water there and why you're so connected to us, but it means so much because I love a lot of Brazilian music. Love it, love it, love it.
Samba, my friend. We've had some great samba artists on the show, actually.
And
I
I
love samba music.
Yeah, I do too, and I love a lot of the metal and hard rock, and they know hard rock music, and they're dedicated, and they've been honestly coming in and watching our videos, and especially the new video for Remnants. Brazil has been like super hot on us. I also want to say a special shout out to Spain. They've been really into us, and we're going to be featured in Mariscal Rock, which La Heavy, which is we've been featured in the past. They're going to be doing a full bang up article and feature us. So I want to say a big special shout out to those fans who are so vocal and fired up, and we really appreciate their support because it's been great. They've been really championing us, and we get a lot of communication from fans from both of those countries in particular. So
what's it like? You know, you're in New York City. You're a city boy like I am. I'm a New York City guy. You're writing music that gets picked up by people around the world and places you never expect. What's it like when you hear like from fans who are really moved by your music in places that you wouldn't expect?
you know, I think I used to be a little more surprised about, but there's a whole thing, and you probably get this as you've been traveling and touring yourself, right? You probably coming from New York, it's not surprising because there's such a mixture of what we all grew up listening to as musicians. So the fact that like for whatever reason certain countries and people in those countries really connect with your work doesn't shock me so much anymore. It's just, if anything, it just reaffirms the power of music, and the idea that, hey, it was cool that you had such a diverse exposure to all sorts of music. And yeah, it's important to listen to stuff because for whatever reason, people will connect, and it's so inspirational to us and what we do, and it means a lot. And it just kind of, if anything, it just makes it seem like there are no rules. So a lot of our Brazilian fans are like, hey, when are you guys coming to Brazil? I mean, seriously, they ask all the time. And I hope that we can get promoters to get us
I'd come
there.
down tomorrow. I'd love to go to Brazil. It sounds awesome.
Yeah, I haven't been to Brazil yet, so I'd love to. But I mean, the hopes are that that's what we're hoping to do in the coming years. Maybe be able to get sponsorship to go down and do some shows. And they have like rabid rock fans that get their rock and they're devoted and they know their music, which is really great. So it's not just the thing, when you see like the Rush live in Rio, they know the music. It's not just like, oh, we know the popular songs, the hits. They're about the band, whether it be, metal stuff, in the case of Brazil, I think about Sepultura and stuff like that, I was turned on to, and they were so great. And doing such great music. And now there are all these other Brazilian bands that are doing great music too. So, I just think it's really terrific. But I love it. It's very, to answer to your question, Jason, it's just very enheartening. It reminds you like, okay, this is what this is about. This is why you do it. It's not necessarily just for, your audiences. We have a pretty good audience in New York and maybe the tri-state area, but it's for people that are anywhere that can connect. So.
Fantastic. Well, tell us where. Whenever you have a live performance, you let me know, and we're going to be there in the front row. We're going to be there. I wouldn't miss it.
I'll let you know, and I really appreciate you guys supporting. I'm so glad we got to do this and have a chat, and I appreciate you supporting the new record that's coming out.
Well, it's very exciting. We're going to put it on all our platforms and share it, spread the word, because I just love when I hear music that moves me and is exciting and new and fresh. And this EP is going to be special.
Yeah, I think so too. And thanks again, Jason. I think I also want to say that I think things that are important. I think we were talking about the idea of what's important, and I think what's been great is that I realized that besides my family, it's just music. Those are the things that carry me. So I was carried by so much music as a child and as a kid, and wanted initially I think you get the bug where you get pretty decent at your instrument and you just kind of want to show everyone. And then there's a point where you start to kind of you got enough technique that you can learn to forget some of the technique, and becomes more about like, what are you trying to share, what are you trying to say? And like, yeah, it's great that you can hit these notes and you can sing pretty well, but are you saying anything? And what's been really great is that I feel with Four Trips Ahead, I feel like we've been in the last 6 or 7, 8 years, I think really kind of honing our sound, and I feel like we've been saying things that resonate. And so it's just been really it's been really enheartening that people have been starting to find that connection. And so, you know, like I said, I can't wait till we'll be able to play out live and connect in deeper ways with people, which will happen soon.
Well, we're thrilled to have you here today, Peter, and we're on the air with Peter Wilson of Four Trips Ahead, whose EP drops out this Friday, so make sure you check it out. And final question, you're on a desert island, you can bring 3 albums with you. What might they
God. Be? Jason, you're not doing this to me. 3 albums. Whoa. And sorry, so 3 albums in that
any genres, could be anything.
Okay.
First thing that comes to your mind.
Wow. Okay. This you don't know how much this is killing me. I don't think I could even do 10, much less 3. Okay. All right. Without gun to my head, Queen 2, The Wailers, Burnin'. So before it became Bob Marley, there's the original Wailers, Burnin' with Bob, Peter, and Bunny. Oh my God, my last choice. Whew. I'll go for broke. I'll go for a not new band, but a new, or a little bit later than those bands. I'd say King's X, Out of the Silent Planet, which was their first record, just because it was a record. It's between that and like the Bad Brains Quickness, but I'm going to go with King's X's Out of the Silent Planet. And the reason why I would go with that is because I was like 17, 18 when that record came out. And like a lot of 17, 18-year-olds, you're kind of trying to find your way. And it was I was going through a lot of emotional stuff, doing fine in school and things. I had friends, but there was and my family, very close, loving, always there. But I was still, you know, sometimes you find as a musician, as an artist, there's just like some space, there was a void. And I felt like I wanted to sing and do this music, but the music that I was hearing in my head, I didn't see. It was like kind of that was when it was MTV. It was very what I was seeing in the pop music world was very not like me and my voice. People didn't look like me. They didn't sound like me. I liked some of it, but I didn't really connect with some of it. And I just wanted something more. And I felt a little bit kind of out there, floating in the rock world. And and that record, and I say this literally, I joke about it, but I mean it. That record literally like saved my life. I heard it. And
music can do that, right? Music's got that power.
It sucked me in, and I was obsessed with that record, lyrically looking, and they had all their lyrics mushed together. And I remember, you know, reading every line, and it connected with me on a very deep spiritual level. And that band has been so important to me and to my other band members. We all love that band, but that record, and I can name, there are other records in some ways that I like more, but I always name the first one because the timing of it coming out, and I said, oh God, I can do this. And there are other people that hear music differently, and it was unapologetic, and it was just so different. And I wish that they had gotten the commercial success that they so well warranted. But the great thing is that they're still around. They're recording a new record, and there's such amazing musicians, and people that love them are rabid about them. So I really love, I had to mention King's X record, but that one in particular, like I said, really hit me hard. But any of those 3 records, and I'm sure I'm going to get off with you and I'm going to go, oh my God, why didn't I say this?
Well, that's the thing about music. There's always so many great artists that we love and that we've grown up with. And well, I hope you'll come back on the show when you're back on the road. I want to hear what it's like to be back in front of an audience again, like how emotional that's going to be when you get to play the music you've been working on for a year, 2 years, and bring that to live audiences again. I'd love to talk to you about that on the other side.
That'd be great. Jason, thank you so much. And thanks for doing the show. It's really great to chat with a fellow musician.
I just love to talk about cross genres and to break down the boundaries, because music is music. And I tell my students at the university that at Seton Hall that there's two types of music, good and not good. And that takes genre out of the equation. There's great music in every genre.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you, my friend, are making some really wonderful music, and I can't wait to see what the future is going to hold for 4 trips ahead.
Thank you so much, Jason. Be well.
All the best. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on Music Matters with Jason Tramm. Please remember to subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on all of our other platforms. You can find us on Spotify, Apple iTunes, all of the different places. So make sure you check us out there. Instagram, you name it, we're there. Thank you so much. And we're going to be back this week. We've got a composer coming Thursday, Felix Gerard, who's doing wonderful operatic. He's composing operas and some really spectacular vocal music. And check us out on www.jasontram.org. Once again, www.jasontram.org, where you can see our 200 past episodes. Thank you very much, and remember, keep music alive.